Welcome back. What's the Florida legislature doing to save the state's citrus industry, which continues to be devastated by citrus greening disease? Slashing the Department of Citrus budget, of course. The agency is getting a little over $4.6 million from the state, down from $7.65 million. The department has eliminated 20 jobs in administration, scientific research, and marketing. This, as we reported, as the number of packing houses across Florida has dropped from 106 in 2000 to 26 this year. And joining us for more on the local impact of citrus greening is Dean Mixon, president of Mixon Fruit Farms in East Bradenton, and Tim Brown, the third-generation owner of Brown's Grove in Sarasota. And gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. You know, in Adam's story, you know, the woman said that the citrus industry has always recovered, always bounced back from different things that have come along, but I'm interested in hearing from the both of you is at what point do things become so serious that you fear that the industry as a whole might not be able to come back to its past glory? Dean?
I think we're already past that at this point as far as the industry as a whole. There's been so much acreage sold off to development and so forth that those people are not going to come back into the industry. There has been some new plantings going on, and people are trying, and just like we're both third-generation citrus farmers, and maybe stubborn's a better word than resilient, but we're still in it.
Dean, in Adam's story, you said that what percentage of your acreage have you already sold off?
Well, before the greening and the canker, different diseases that we've had, tristasia is another one you don't hear about too much, but we lost about 200 acres, or we're losing it, and it got to the point where it didn't make sense to replant it, because you got a minimum of 7 years or so investment before you get any economic return off the trees once you plant them.
Tim, I think this might come as a shock to people because, you know, we on this broadcast and other news broadcasts, we talk about citrus greening all the time, but I don't think most people are aware that, you know, we may be past the point where the industry can recover.
Well, this is definitely the biggest hurdle the industry's ever had to face. I think it's going to take a long time to get it back to where it was, if it's even possible. I mean, we've lost so many acres of grove, and these packing houses that are shutting down simply because they don't have the fruit available. I mean, we've gone 50 years backwards in the industry at this point.
How much longer can you hold out?
Well, we're still planting new groves, and we are a small producer compared to some. We are primarily a fresh fruit grower, and we're still hanging in there. We're still planting trees and staying up with the research and hoping that, you know, things will get better. And we have seen a slight improvement, but it's still far from where it needs to be.
You said this to me before we went on the air, that the situation this year was better than last year. Could you explain?
Well, we're seeing better tree vigor and growth. We're seeing new flush on trees that we were ready to take out 2 years ago. And it's looking better tree-wise, but we're still not seeing the yields that we would like to see and need to see on the trees.
Dean, same with you?
Yeah, the trees aren't growing. I mean, they get to a certain size, you plant a new tree, and it gets to about a 6-year-old size, and it stays there. It just doesn't have enough root structure to support a stronger tree.
All right. We are just getting started with this important discussion, and we will continue right after we check on the weather. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing the devastating impact of citrus greening on groves across Florida and how the distribution of funding could affect the future of citrus farming in our state. And our guests join us tonight are Dean Mixon of Mixon Fruit Farms and Tim Brown of Brown's Groves. A couple of things I want to get into. Number one is a question of whether there is a domino effect. You know, we talked about the fact that the decline in the number of packing houses from 106 in 2000 to 24 now. There's a quote from a gentleman from the Haines City citrus grower saying that you don't have enough fruit to efficiently run the plants that we have. So the question becomes is if your supply of fruit is less than it was, are these packing houses and distributors going to be run out of business? So if we do eventually solve citrus greening, you might not have the infrastructure to allow the industry to come back. Dean?
Well, the bigger houses have a set fixed cost, and they've got to run a certain amount of volume to make it worthwhile. And they've got the people and the employees that they're trying to keep going. And when they can't get enough fruit, then it definitely has a domino effect in those economies. The smaller houses like ourselves, we got a little bit more leg room to play with, as far as we can back off and still maintain our equipment and have that capability to move back into heavier volume that we used to have 10, 12, 15 years ago.
As Adam reported, you are diversifying to what different kinds of fruits and crops?
Ourselves, we haven't done anything as far as the packing house is concerned. We are trying, like you said, the bamboo is one of the things we've done. And I know a lot of the packing houses are running blueberries, or running peaches and different crops. Pomegranates, another thing I've heard. And so a lot of people are trying different things and trying to keep their grows in agriculture.
Tim, what we've heard recently is that there, amongst growers, there is concern, if not a little anger, in terms of the state, that they are putting money into research in terms of how to combat citrus greening, but they are not putting enough effort into helping the growers survive until we can conquer the disease.
Well, we're faced with grower cost 3 to 4 times what it was 10 years ago, just to keep the trees in good health. And we're not seeing any government help as far as what our cost is as growers to stay on top of things.
What have you done to try to talk to state legislature tours about this?
Well, we've tried to talk. I think Dean has talked with Vern Buchanan and a few others, and it's just a big domino effect that it's just not happening. We need more support to the growers. Research is great, and we definitely need research, but the growers need help too.
Well, there are two aspects of that. Vern Buchanan, when you talk to him, you're talking about federal money, and when you're talking about budgets in Washington, they're pretty tight these days, and it's also a regional thing that you would have to get legislators in other parts of the country that are not as concerned about citrus to put up money. If you're talking about the Florida legislature, this is a statewide emergency, is it not? I mean, is the legislature in Florida doing everything it can do for growers?
Well, I think there's a lot more they could do. One of the things that we've like to see is maybe help us with, if we want to experiment with something, maybe that hadn't, instead of doing it all through the research facility, help offset the cost of the material and let us try it. Set aside a few acres here and there and try it in that area and just see. We're willing to, at this point, we're willing to try anything. So, but we're not seeing it. It's all being funneled through the research.
Just like you hear with cancer and experimental drugs, people want tests and on the local level so they could try to get help, because when people are desperate for that. I guess what's so surprising to me in listening to both of you talk is, growing up, no matter what part of the country you're from, you know that Florida is the citrus capital of the country. And if you're talking about companies, whether it's growers or distributors who are so affected by this, if the industry is not here, where's it going?
Well, the industry, unfortunately, is going to go to other states. I mean, California and foreign countries. I mean, that's why it's so important that we stay on top of this in Florida to rebuild the industry and get the government monies where they need to be.
And Dean, you've gone to California and looked at the operations out there.
I've been out there quite a few years ago, and they've always had the beautiful fruit on the tree, because they don't have the wind and the rain and the humidity that we have here, and so they can grow a much more beautiful fruit. We always say, if you want beautiful fruit for the center stand, you buy your stuff from California, but you want to eat something good, get it from Florida. So,
talking about 2 different pieces of fruit totally.
Well, so it's just not the same. Also, in the grocery store, what we say more often than not is fruit from South America. Is citrus greening impacting fruit from South America, and are you concerned about the industry moving south? Dean?
I'm concerned about the quality that the consumer is getting from that fruit, because they don't have the regulations and rules and environmental issues that we have to deal with. and there's no real quality check on that fruit coming in, that people really don't know what they're getting.
Right. How much time do we have here in terms of when do we need to make real progress in terms of fixing this before, you know, I asked you about the point of no return, but in terms of survival of the industry here in Florida?
Well, it really should have started yesterday. We're behind times already. I mean, we need help immediately. I mean, things are bad, but we're still struggling. I mean, the industry's not dead. We've just taken a big step backwards, and it's going to take time to rebuild.
Is there anything that anybody watching this, the consumer, can do right now to help our own Florida citrus producers along?
I believe that we need to let the consumers know that this Florida citrus that is going on the markets today is good quality fruit. It's not affected with greening. We as growers know and can identify affected fruit from non-infected fruit. The fruit that they're buying is good quality, and what's going out of state or being sold locally is still the same type of citrus they've always had in the past. What we're faced with now is just crop yields being much shorter and less of the fruit.
Because of all the publicity that this issue has gotten, there's been no drop-off in terms of consumers you know, staying away from Florida citrus because, you know, they hear the stories about citrus greening, and obviously they don't have that kind of information.
I don't feel like that's the biggest thing that's holding it back. It's just the environment has changed. People with NAFTA, we got all these other fruit coming in all through the citrus season. And in years past, especially in the north, citrus and apples and bananas is probably about the only fruit that you had.
Right.
But now you got grapes and watermelons and peaches and everything year round, and those are easier to eat fruit. People are, I don't want to say they're lazy, but they don't have as much time, so they're not, you know, citrus has to be peeled and prepared. And I think those environments are hitting us too.
Well, I mean, from that point of view, have some of the major, you know, supermarkets undercut Florida citrus producers by bringing in so much of that foreign fruit?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, you go into the markets right here in Florida, even during the peak of our season,
right?
And it's hard to find Florida fruit.
Yeah.
It upsets me. It's always upset me that we got more California and Mexico and different fruit in the market than what we have right here in Florida.
We have less than a minute left in this segment, but how are we looking for next season?
Well, I think we had an improved season with tree growth and vigor this year. With the bloom that we're seeing, we're not got the yields that we should have. So as far as boxes on the tree, I don't think we're a lot better off than we were last year, but the tree health does seem to have some improvement.
That is good. We will take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests on citrus screening, so stay with us. Welcome back. When our state and federal government sets aside funding for citrus screening, it most often goes to researchers instead of those who depend on growing for their livelihood. What more can be done to help those in the citrus industry? Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And Dean, let me start with you. What more can be done right now?
I think the research is great, but we got to be able to have some funds to go into the growers to help the growers out. Else the economics just aren't there for the growers to stay in business.
And we talked at the outset that amongst the monies that the state has cut for this year is marketing, but you can't market what you don't have.
Exactly. Yeah. Why spend money on marketing when you can spend it somewhere else more efficiently?
Tim, if you could talk right now to influential state legislators and even the governor, what would you say?
Well, I would let them know that, you know, this is a serious situation, and if we are going to continue to have citrus as the state #1 crop, I mean, we've got to have government money to help the growers. I mean,
have we handled this as the emergency and the crisis that it obviously is?
I believe they have, but I don't know if they're hearing what we're saying. I mean, the growers have shouted out for several years now, but it's just the industry is getting smaller and smaller.
What specifically have you shouted out to them?
Well, we've let them know that the citrus industry is just diminishing. I mean, just a sign that so many packing houses have closed up, you know, is a sure sign that the industry is going away if we don't get the help that we need.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I wish you both the best of luck, and let's hope that you have a good crop next year. Dean Mixon is the president of Mixon Fruit Farms Incorporated in Bradenton, and Tim Brown is the third-generation owner of Brown's Grove in Sarasota, which was founded in 1915